The autumn air carried a quiet chill, the kind that made the streets of the suburb feel both calm and lonely at the same time. At the end of the driveway, a man stood still. His boots were worn thin, his jacket faded to a dull green, and the backpack slung over his shoulder looked like it had seen half a lifetime. His face carried the lines of someone who had been away for far too long. He stared at the house in front of him. It wasn't just any house, it was bigger now, freshly painted, with trimmed hedges and a polished gate, but the shape of it hadn't changed. He remembered standing on that same porch as a boy, holding a baseball glove in one hand, waiting for someone to call him in for dinner. The memory felt like another lifetime. He raised his hand, then lowered it again. For a moment it seemed easier to walk away, to keep carrying his silence and his years like he always had. But something inside pushed him forward. With a breath so heavy it shook in his chest, he knocked on the door. The sound echoed through the hall inside. He heard footsteps, slow, cautious, each one closer than the last. The knob turned and the door opened. An older woman appeared. Her hair had silvered with time, her hands trembling slightly as she held the edge of the door. She wore a simple cardigan, the kind someone puts on without thinking, and behind her the warm glow of the house spilled out across the porch. Her eyes locked on him. For a moment nothing moved. She pressed one hand against the doorframe as if steadying herself. The colour drained from her face, her lips parted, her voice breaking in a whisper. "Dear God, it can't be you." The man shifted his weight, eyes lowering before he finally spoke. His voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in years, but it carried a weight that pierced the night. "I came back," he said softly. The woman's eyes filled with tears, her breath caught in her throat. She gripped the doorframe tighter, unsure if she should open it wider or shut it forever. And then the house fell silent. The woman's hand trembled as she stepped back, opening the door just wide enough for him to enter. Her eyes never left his face, as if she feared he might vanish the second she blinked. Inside, the house felt almost too polished, too perfect compared to the worn-down man standing in her doorway. Hardwood floors gleamed under the light, framed photos lined the walls, weddings, graduations, children with smiling faces. It wasn't the home he remembered. It had changed, just like everything else. He set his backpack down carefully by the door, almost as if he were afraid of dirtying the floor. His voice was low, uncertain. "I know it's hard to believe, but I lived here once." The woman's eyes narrowed, pain flickering across her face. "That boy, he never came back. We mourned him. We buried his memory." Her voice cracked. "You can't just walk in after all these years and claim to be him." The air grew heavy. From the hallway, a younger man appeared, perhaps in his 30s, dressed neatly, his expression sharp with suspicion. He looked from the soldier to the older woman, then back again. "Who is this?" he demanded. The soldier straightened his back, trying to steady himself. "I'm not here to take anything, I just needed to see this place again." The younger man let out a bitter laugh. "Right, another drifter with a story. You think we haven't seen this before? People showing up pretending to be someone they're not, hoping for a free meal or a roof over their head." The words cut deep, but the soldier didn't fight back. He lowered his gaze, the years of silence weighing on him. The older woman shook her head, torn between doubt and something deep inside her heart that whispered otherwise. "Please," she said softly, "if you truly are who you claim, show us something only he would know." The soldier reached slowly for his backpack, unzipping the worn fabric. His hands searched inside until his fingers brushed against something fragile, something he had carried across oceans and years. He pulled out a photograph, edges curled, colours faded with time. He placed it gently on the coffee table between them. A small boy stood on the porch of this very house, a baseball glove tucked under his arm, sunlight catching in his smile. The woman gasped, her hand flew to her mouth. The younger man crossed his arms, eyes cold. "That proves nothing. Pictures can be found, stolen, faked. If you want us to believe you." The photograph lay on the table, its faded colours catching the light. For a moment, the room was silent, only the hum of the refrigerator filling the air. The older woman stared at the image, her eyes searching for the boy she once knew, the boy who used to run through this very yard barefoot, laughing until the sun went down. But the younger man wasn't convinced. He folded his arms tighter, his jaw set. "Anyone could have picked that up at a flea market," he muttered, "or found it in the trash. People pull scams like this all the time." The soldier swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had heard those words before, in bus stations, shelters, places where nobody trusted anyone. But hearing them here, in what used to be his home, stung more than anything. The woman touched the edge of the photograph with trembling fingers. "I remember this day," she whispered. "It was summer. The glove was a gift. His father bought it right before—" Her voice broke off, her gaze clouded with doubt. The younger man shook his head firmly. "Memories can play tricks, Mom. Don't let him use yours against you." The soldier looked between them, his heart pounding. He wanted to explain everything. The nights he lay awake in barracks, the years lost to hospitals and drifting from town to town. But where would he even begin? Then came a knock on the door, sharp, hurried. The woman flinched, her eyes darting toward the sound. The younger man opened it to find two neighbours standing on the porch, curiosity written all over their faces. Word had already spread. "We heard something," one of them said. "Is it true? Somebody's come back." The soldier's chest tightened. The eyes of strangers fell on him like a spotlight, their whispers rising. "Looks too young to be him. Could be some drifter. Didn't the news warn about people pretending to be veterans?" The woman pressed her hand against her chest, shaken by the voices. Doubt crept in deeper. The soldier stood there, silent, his shoulders heavy beneath the weight of their suspicion. He had carried battles on his back, but this felt heavier. The younger man turned, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "If you really belong here, prove it. Say something only the real boy would know." The soldier lifted his eyes slowly, his voice low but steady. The room grew tense as the soldier's words hung in the air. His eyes shifted to the older woman. "The song," he whispered, "the one about the sparrow finding its way home. You used to hum it to me when the thunder shook the windows." The woman froze, her breath caught in her throat. For a moment she saw herself younger, standing in that very hallway, cradling a boy who clung to her shirt, rocking him until the storm passed. Her lips trembled. No one else knew that. But before her tears could fall, the younger man cut in sharply. Or maybe he heard it from someone else. Songs aren't proof. His voice was cold, almost desperate. "I won't let some stranger trick you into believing." The neighbours shifted uncomfortably, their whispers sharpening into judgment. "Scammer," someone muttered. "They'll say anything for sympathy." The soldier's chest ached, his fists clenching at his sides. He wanted to shout, to beg them to see the truth. But the years had worn his voice down to something quieter. "I'm not here to steal. I just wanted to come home." The younger man stepped forward, his presence filling the room. "This isn't your home. You need to leave, now." The soldier looked at the woman one last time. Her eyes were wet, torn between memory and doubt, but her silence cut deeper than words. Slowly, he picked up his worn backpack, its straps frayed from years of carrying more than it should. He walked toward the door. The neighbours parted, eyes hard, some filled with pity, others with suspicion. The air outside felt colder than when he had arrived. As the door closed behind him with a dull thud, the woman pressed her palm against it, whispering through the wood as if her words might still reach him. "If you really are him, come back with proof." The soldier paused on the porch, his breath clouding in the night air. He looked down at his hands, rough and scarred, then slipped them into his pocket. His fingers brushed against something he had carried for decades, something he had never shown anyone. The soldier stood alone on the porch, the night air cool against his skin. He opened his hand and looked down at the small rusted object resting in his palm. It was a silver pocket watch, its surface scratched and dulled by time, the chain nearly broken. He rubbed his thumb across the back where faint engravings still remained. The words had faded, but they were still there. "Come back with all your heart." It had been given to him long ago, a farewell gift slipped into his hand before he left for war. He had carried it through dirt, rain, fire and years of wandering. When everything else was lost, this stayed with him. He held it tightly now, as though it could anchor him to the life he once had. Behind the closed door, the older woman sat in the living room, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady her breath. The younger man paced back and forth. "You can't honestly believe him," he said sharply. "Anyone could spin a story. That song, that photo, it's all too convenient." But she shook her head. There was something in his eyes, something I remember. The neighbours, restless and curious, hadn't left. They lingered near the gate, whispering under the glow of the street lamp. "Did you see the look on him?" one said, "like he'd been carrying ghosts his whole life." Another scoffed. "Or carrying lies." The soldier slipped the pocket watch back into his jacket. He took one last look at the house, its windows glowing warmly, like a memory he wasn't allowed to touch. Then he stepped off the porch, his boots crunching against the gravel path. But just as he reached the sidewalk, the door creaked open again. The older woman stood in the frame, her voice unsteady. "Wait!" The neighbours turned their heads. The younger man followed her to the doorway, his expression full of warning. The soldier stopped but didn't turn around. He waited, silent, the pocket watch pressing hard against his chest. The woman took a cautious step forward. Her eyes searched the darkness, her voice barely more than a whisper. "If you truly are who you say, show me something only he would have kept." The soldier slowly turned, his face lit faintly by the porch light. The soldier opened his palm, letting the porch light fall across the watch. Its silver surface was worn thin, the chain twisted and bent, but the engraving on the back still whispered from another time. The woman leaned closer, her breath trembling. She reached out as if her fingers might betray her heart, brushing across the words carved so many years ago. "Come back with all your heart." Her lips quivered. I remember when this was given. It was supposed to stay with him forever." Her voice cracked, the memories pressing hard against her chest. No one else could have this." The soldier's eyes softened, but before he could speak, the younger man stepped forward, his jaw tight, his voice sharp enough to cut through the night. "Or maybe he stole it. Things like this can be sold, traded, picked up anywhere. You can't just believe him because he shows you something shiny." The crowd of neighbours murmured, their doubt feeding on his words. "Could be stolen," one whispered. "We've heard stories like that." The soldier's hand closed around the watch, his knuckles white. He had carried it through fire, through nights so dark he thought he'd never see morning. And now it was just another piece of evidence twisted against him. His voice was low, steady but aching. "I never stole this. It was pressed into my hand before I left, and it never left me. Not once." The older woman looked into his eyes, her own filling with tears. Something inside her wavered. Half of her wanted to step forward and embrace him, the other half still chained by fear of being wrong. The younger man shook his head, anger sparking in his eyes. "You want proof? Fine. Tomorrow we go to the Veterans Hall. If he's telling the truth, somebody there will know him." The soldier lowered his gaze, the weight of exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. He had spent years surviving, never asking anyone to believe in him. But now, everything seemed to depend on it. He slipped the watch back into his jacket, his voice just above a whisper. "Then tomorrow, we'll see." The neighbours shifted, exchanging looks. The night air grew colder, heavy with anticipation. The next evening, the soldier found himself sitting in a dim bar on Main Street, the kind of place where the jukebox hadn't worked in years, and the air always smelled faintly of smoke and old wood. The younger man sat a few stools away, arms crossed, eyes sharp, making sure every move was watched. The older woman sat quietly at a small table, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. The soldier nursed a glass of water, not beer, his hands wrapped around it like it was the only thing grounding him. He could feel the stares of strangers pressing down, each one weighing the question he couldn't answer himself. Would anyone here know him? The door creaked open. A man in his 60s shuffled in, his shoulders stooped, but his eyes still carrying the weight of a soldier's past. He wore a faded jacket with old patches barely holding on. The younger man waved him over. "This is who I wanted you to meet," he said firmly. "Tell us if you've ever seen him before." The older veteran squinted at the soldier, his gaze narrowing, studying the lines of his face. He stepped closer, the bar falling silent around them. For a moment he said nothing, then his voice came low and hoarse. "I know those eyes." The soldier's breath caught, the The room seemed to tilt. The veteran reached out, his fingers hovering near the soldier's shoulder. "Kei-san, you pulled me out of the mud when I thought I was gone. You dragged me until the choppers came. I'll never forget it." The younger man frowned, skeptical. "That could be a guess. Lots of people fought in the same place." The veteran's eyes sharpened. He pointed to the soldier's shoulder. "Then let's see it. The scar. The one you got when the shrapnel tore through during the ambush. You told me once you'd carry it to your grave." The soldier froze. Slowly, with trembling hands, he slipped off his jacket and pulled down the collar of his shirt. Gasps rippled through the bar. Across his shoulder ran a jagged scar, pale against his skin, the kind only time and pain could carve. The veteran's eyes glistened as he placed a hand over it. His voice cracked. "It's him. After all these years, it's really him." The bar went quiet, every whisper silenced. The older woman's hands shook as tears filled her eyes. The younger man's face hardened, but even he couldn't look away. The bar was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in a forgotten glass. The veteran's arms wrapped tightly around the soldier, their embrace rough but unshakable, the kind only men who had seen war could share. "You saved my life," the older man whispered. "I never thought I'd see you again." The soldier stood stiff at first, then let himself sink into the moment. His throat tightened, his eyes burning. For so long he had carried silence like armour, never expecting anyone to break through it. And now, here was someone who remembered, someone who knew. The older woman at the table pressed her hands to her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. Memories flooded back. Baseball games in the front yard, summer evenings with fireflies, the way a boy's laughter used to echo in these very streets. She whispered to herself, almost afraid to believe, "It really is him." But the younger man wasn't ready to let go of doubt. His arms still crossed, his eyes narrowing as he watched. "So maybe he knew you. That doesn't mean he belongs here. People come back with stories all the time. Doesn't make them family." The soldier turned, his voice low, heavy with weariness. "I'm not here to take a name, or money, or a place at your table. I just wanted to be seen, to not disappear like I never existed." His words hung in the air, heavy enough to make even the bartender stop polishing glasses and listen. The younger man looked away, but something in his face cracked, an uncertainty he couldn't hide. The veteran's hand stayed on the soldier's shoulder. "I was there. I saw him bleed. That scar doesn't lie. If this man says he came from here, then he came from here." The soldier swallowed hard. His gaze returned to the older woman. "I've been gone too long. I can't undo what I missed. But if there's still a place, even just a corner to stand, that's all I need." The woman's lips trembled. She reached across the table, her hand stretching toward him, fingers shaking as if touching him would make the years collapse. The bar emptied slowly that night, the whispers fading into the cool air outside. The veteran had left with a firm squeeze on the soldier's shoulder, his words echoing, "Don't let them make you disappear again." The older woman walked beside the soldier down the quiet street, her steps slow but steady. The younger man followed a few paces behind, his silence louder than any accusation. Street lamps glowed over the sidewalks, casting long shadows that stretched across the pavement. When they reached the house, the woman stopped at the gate. Her hand rested on the cold iron, her eyes searching his face in the dim light. "I don't know what the years took from you," she said softly, "but I know they took a lot from me too." The soldier's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything, the sleepless nights, the faces of men who never came home, the way he'd drifted from town to town, never staying long enough to belong anywhere. But words felt too small. He simply nodded, his voice low. "I can't change the years I lost. I just don't know if I have the right to stand here anymore." The younger man finally stepped forward, his face still guarded. "If you stay, it changes everything. Our lives, our family, our name." His tone was firm, but underneath it lay something else, fear, not anger. The soldier looked between them, torn. The porch light cast a warm glow on the woman's silver hair, while the younger man stood stiff, unwilling to bend. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, old-fashioned key. Pressing it into the soldier's hand, she whispered, "This house has always been more than wood and walls. It was meant to hold the people who belong. Whether you believe it or not, You still do." The key felt heavy in his palm, heavier than the pack he had carried all those years. He stared at it, his throat tight, his heart aching with both gratitude and uncertainty. "I need to find her," he finally said, his voice breaking. "My mother. If she's still alive, she deserves to see me at least once more." The woman's eyes shone with tears. "Then go. But remember this, no matter what you find, there will be a place waiting when you come back." The soldier stood at the gate long after the porch light flickered off for the night. The old key pressed into his palm like a promise, cool and solid, reminding him of everything he had lost and everything he might still gain. The house behind him was quiet now, its windows glowing faintly against the dark. For years it had been a place that lived only in his memory. Tonight, it had given him something he thought he'd never feel again: recognition. He turned toward the road, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. Each step away from the house felt heavier than the last, but not empty. For the first time in decades, he wasn't wandering aimlessly. He had direction, he had a purpose. At the corner, he paused, looking back. The older woman still stood in the doorway, her hand lifted in a silent wave, tears glistening on her cheeks. Behind her, the younger man leaned against the frame, his face unreadable, but no longer hardened with suspicion. The soldier raised the key slightly as if to say, "I'll be back." The road stretched out ahead, quiet and endless. Somewhere out there, his mother might still be waiting. Somewhere, the answers he had carried inside him for too long might finally find a home. He tightened the strap of his worn backpack, the pocket watch resting close to his heart, and took a deep breath of the cool night air. For years he had been a man without a name, a man without a place. Now, at last, he carried both, fragile but real. As the streetlights dimmed behind him, his footsteps grew steadier. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was moving towards something. Sometimes family isn't only the people we're born to, it's the ones who still leave a light on when we finally come home. But here's the question: if someone you loved showed up after years of silence, carrying scars and memories only you could recognize, would you open the door?